think my neighbors are watching me. Hi. So one of the best things I love about living in Africa is the fruit. Africa is so fertile that seeds fall on the ground, sprout up, and we get to enjoy the fruits of the earth. So there has been something circulating around the internet that I want to talk about. The EU government has decided to block Uganda's oil pipeline on grounds of human rights violations, on grounds of unfair treatment. They're saying that we're stealing land from a lot of people and not fairly compensating them, which that's wrong. Stealing land from people, taking land from people without fair compensation is wrong. However, I would like to point out the double standard, the incredible double standard of nations that have made their wealth off of two things. Number one, oil, and number two, disenfranchisement of African, Asian, and Oceanian and South American people. Basically anyone who isn't Caucasian. That's just an interesting dynamic that I would like to point out. So Africa has finally realized that in order to get to a level where it can can have a seat at the global table, we are going to have to strengthen our economies. And let's face it, in this day and age, and probably for the next 50 years, oil and gas is the easiest way to do that. Oil and gas is going to be king until electric and more renewable energies kind of take root. The moment that African nations have the capacity to solve African problems, we will not be in a position where that messed up power dynamic that is going on between the East and the West can affect us anymore. We will be able to negotiate on our own terms, and we will be able to utilize our natural resources in our lands ourselves. We won't have to export raw iron, we won't have to export raw gold, we won't have to export crude oil. We will have the refineries here, and our economies will grow, and our literacy levels will rise, and there will be more jobs for the youth and all of that good stuff. Africa needs to put its foot down, because if we continue to accept the West's power plays, if we continue to allow the world to stand in the way of our development path, just like they disrupted our development paths with the Race for Africa, they disrupted our development paths with transatlantic slave trade, they disrupted our development paths with things like the Gold Coast experiment. Africa has not been allowed to develop organically and naturally for 1,000 years, and we know better now. We are better equipped to defend ourselves. Africa is one of the fastest rising economies globally, and taking advantage of oil, taking advantage of data, which is the new gold, is going to accelerate that problem. It's going to accelerate that process. But in order to do this, the dependency that African nations have on the West to run our nations, like over 50% of our budget comes from aid and loans and barter trade deals with the West, or more recently, the East with China. Unless we begin to focus on import substitution, focus on developing solutions for our problems, focus on more local resource mobilization to fund our budgets, build stronger ties between Africa. Definitely need to make a video about Pan-Africanism. Unless we begin to create African solutions for African problems, or strengthen African solutions for African problems, this is going to keep happening. This is going to keep happening. If there are human rights violations happening around the Ugandan oil pipeline, let other African nations, not people on a whole other continent that honestly don't understand the nuances of African society in the first place, keep quiet. Take a back seat. Let the African Union have that discussion. Let the African Union come approach our nation's leaders and let us have a conversation about it where we can move forward, not completely shutting things down like no, stop, because there are intentions behind that I am not convinced are wholesome. I'm not really convinced that the people in this EU government give a pig's back foot about the individuals on this land. It's not a good thing, but I think that they're using that to push a different agenda. So if you are African on or off the continent, I think you need to speak up about this, advocate for African solutions to African problems, advocate for the use of things locally developed, like support the local economy. Let's put Africa where it needs to be. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, let me know your opinions on this very interesting petition, I think it is, by the EU government. Let me know what you think about that, and I will see you right here next week. Bye. The mosquitoes.